everything, which, it turns out, by my wife's admission, was something she'd wish I surprised her with. After my wife calmed down, I proceeded to explain that the second envelope contained a list of marriage/personal counselors and instructions for her to choose one. She was then given the ultimatum to choose one of the envelopes. I would be leaving Sunday morning to catch my first flight to the US, and she'd got until the time I returned to make the decision, as I refused to be spoken to and treated like I was that night. Add in the fact that she didn't see, and I'm still not sure she does, that her reaction was uncalled for and way over the top. Before she could respond, I told her in no uncertain terms that if she started screaming at me, that the second option would be immediately removed from the equation. I'd also reiterated that if I found out she was seeing someone else whilst I was away, option 1 would be selected by default. Update 2. I'm finally back home. I received messages, voicemails, emails, and missed calls, mostly from my wife and a few from friends and family. It turns out the friends we were with that fateful weekend had informed my parents of what went on, along with a few other mutual friends who had inquired about my well-being since I'd been pretty much radio silent since I left for my trip. The messages from my wife started with the usual empty platitudes, insincere apologies, etc. I assumed that when I didn't give her the satisfaction of responding, the messages became more menacing and darker in nature, almost to the point of threatening. I rang her and told her that I'd landed back in the UK and I'd be home after I made a quick stop off at my mother's house. She seemed overly affectionate and sweet on the phone and almost had me wondering if it was the same person I left when I headed out to the US. So I spoke to my mom and laid out everything that had happened and why I took the trip abroad, and she said that she understood but was considerably upset that I left without telling her in person. Anyhow, I get home and my wife practically rugby tackles me the second I'm through the door, again showering me with affection as if nothing had happened at all. She made small talk, asking if I'd enjoyed my trip, asking where I'd been and what I'd saw. I waved her off my lap, sat her down on the sofa next to me, and asked her bluntly if she'd decided the 2 envelopes it presented to her before I left. She simply scoffed at me and asked if it was really serious, because she assumed that I was just being childish and throwing a tantrum. I informed her that I was deadly serious about it and if she'd given it any thought. She just smirked at me and told me to stop being stupid and get over it. My reply was that she'd given me her answer and said, "Thanks for letting me know where I stand." At which point I rang the solicitor who drew up the 2 sets of papers, and although I hated ringing her one Friday afternoon whilst she was likely with family, she asked me what choice my wife had made. I informed her that I didn't want to discuss it over the phone and could make an appointment next week to discuss it in person and go over my options. As I wrote down the appointment time, I caught my wife staring daggers at me and looking so red in the face that I thought she might be on the verge of either having a stroke, heart attack, or both. After I'd finished the call, I turned to face her, and before she had time to say anything, I told her she'd made her choice and that I was serious about it. Later, I heard on the phone sobbing to her best friend about the situation, asking for help on how she could fix the situation. I couldn't hear the other half of the conversation, but from the sobs my wife was making, I could only assume that the advice wasn't what she wanted to hear.